Welcome everyone to this data map session on assessments and multiple measures. So this is not an in-depth session, so we probably won't take the full hour, but looking at some of your assessments and what DataMap offers you based on the information that has already been put into student information for our state testing and so forth. Remember, it's not an automatic flow from student information into DataMap. Someone has to be your admin that does import that information. I will have an admin training sometime in August. I have not posted anything for the summer because we are going to be getting a new events calendar. So we stopped our events in June so that we can make that transition over there. But you will see that on our webpage. I will start the series again, starting in August, working with admin training, and then going through each of the components again. So today we're looking at our home screen, but we are going to look at the assessments part of it. There are three areas that we are going to be looking. One is our state assessments, and that is broken down into two areas, the summary and each of the standards. And then we're going to look at our data points. So our data points are any of your district approved assessments. So if you're using Dibbles, iReady, Maps, anything like that, that would be your data point assessment. And I know we have all age levels and administration on here. So just depending on what your school uses. And then the other area that we are going to look at is the analysis. And in the analysis, it has an assessment comparison component, but it also has the multiple measures, which is a nice way to check your students' progress. So again, we're going to start on this home screen looking at the assessment search. So yes, we know we can search for a student individually to get to their roadmap, but we can also search by assessment types. So couple things to look at when you are working in DataMap. First, I am in my current school year. So I'm in the 24-25. Now, remember, this is a demo database and my kids never progress. So they're always in the same grade every year and they're taking the same tests over and over again. But for you guys, it would be different. So for the 24-25 school year, if you are looking at fourth graders, you are seeing their third grade tests, their assessments. So you'll see the fall and the spring. So think about that. You're in the current school year, but you are still looking at the data from last school year because we don't have this year's data yet into the system. So the first thing it's going to ask us is the assessment type. Yes, some of these are very old. Park goes way back. They will be cleaning this up. You do have your alternate assessments, but you also have your state test. And notice there is the summary and there is the standards. And we'll go through each of those. Right now, I'm just going to look at the standards because that breaks it down by individual student. Then you can also see in here, you can bring up your data points, which would take you directly to the data points area. So if I look at my standards, you'll notice that all of my areas to filter start to populate. So by default, it will look for English. So any of our OST and of course is going to be classified as English. When you're working with your data points, some of your subject area for your data points is classified as reading. So just be cautious of that when you're looking for things. If you're going to reading and you're like, well, where's my fourth grade ELA test? It's because the subject area is English. And then what your test year is. Again, you won't have this year's test scores because we have not received those back. Your tests will be listed here. So you can see you can pick by a test area, you can pick by a grade level, or you can pick by a specific teacher. So right now we're going to switch this to math. We're going to look at math and we want to look at our fifth grade students. So I'm just going to pick grade 5. So when I click on find, you will see it will automatically take me into the state assessment area for standards. Okay, because that's what I picked was I searched by the OST standards. So what the standards does is it shows my student, it shows their grade level for the current school year because I'm in 24-25, but it is showing me their test results for the tested year, which was 23-24. I know it gets confusing, but you got to think about the year that they've tested. And then each of these columns are sort columns. So you can see by default, it sorts my students alphabetically. So it is showing my fifth grade students with their fourth grade math test and their math scores. Then it breaks it down into each of the standards areas, whether they are at, above, or below. And you can see each of the standards areas are listed. Then you can also see some individual details about the student, who their prior teacher was for math, and then who their current teacher is for math. So, and that is based on the scheduling in student information. That is how this information gets pulled. Then you'll also see if they are special ed, it will have a check mark. It doesn't show you areas or anything like that. It just is a yes, no check mark. If they are, whether they have the IEP or not, if they are an EL student, if they are on a 504, they would have a check mark. This is if you are using or your elementaries are using DataMap for the RIMP process. And having a tier 2 RIMP code in there for your students. And then the last column would be the gifted, and it will show the subject areas that they're gifted in. If you're not sure what some of the subject areas are, such as C, if you hover over it, it will tell you that that's the area of social studies. And then, like I said, again, each of these columns are sortable. So if I want to sort my score lowest to highest, it's going to show all my students. And then I can click on it again, and it is now highest to lowest. And then I can go back to my students. Each of these areas that I'm going to show you, they are exportable. So it will export to a spreadsheet, whether you use Excel or a Google Sheet, but it'll be a CSV file that you can use and manipulate and filter out even more. Before we start going over all of the filter areas, let's go back to our home. So that's a way to kind of look at a grade level or a specific test, but there's also other things, especially as administration, that you might want to look at. How's your teacher doing teaching math? Maybe this is that teacher's first year teaching math. Maybe they always taught science and social studies, and you've switched them to math. So I can pull up, and I'm going to just go back to my standards again. This time, I'm going to stick with my math, but this time I'm going to pull in a teacher. Okay. And don't look for a second because this is the downfall of a demo database. So I'm going to look at my math and I'm going to pull in a specific teacher. So we're going to look at Mrs. Freeman here. I didn't get to her. Okay. I can pick a specific class if I want to. It's going to show me. So if I want to look at a specific section, maybe I have an inclusion section. I want to see how those kids did. Maybe I have a gifted section. I want to see how those kids did. So I can pick that individual section. Again, this is all based from scheduling and student information. I'm going to leave it as the teacher as a whole because I want to see how she's progressing this year and did with her class with testing, or actually it would have been last year. Okay, so it's going to pull up only her students. They are going to be in alphabetical order. And again, same concept. Everything is sortable. It's going to show the areas that they are at, below, or above. And then same thing, it's going to show last year's subject area teacher. So they know what teacher they had during that tested year, and then who the current teacher is. So that kind of, so if I'm a teacher myself, my name is going to show up in context just like it does here. If I'm an administrator, usually it's blank. So we have, as administrators, it will come up blank, and we have access to whatever our user role allows us to. So sometimes it might only be for your building, sometimes it might be for the entire district, depending on your role at the district. If you have a role such as a principal, but maybe you also are a teacher of record for maybe a credit recovery class or something like that, your name might show up in context. If that happens, you do not want your name in there because you're only going to have access to those few students that are scheduled to you. So you would want to remove your name from context so that you can see all of the students in your building and or the district. So that does happen occasionally. The other thing is our intervention specialists. A lot of times our intervention specialists, they are actually not the teacher of record for some of our inclusion classes. So, but because they are not scheduled to the class, the intervention specialist, it doesn't get to see those students. So DataMap is all based on scheduling through student information. So in that case, a lot of our districts do allow our intervention specialists to have building access so they can see all the special ed kids and how they're doing because they're in different classrooms throughout the day. So again, that's just a user role that whoever in your district grants access, they would have to modify that form to send to us so we can make sure that they have the proper data map access. Okay. So we're going to go over here now. So from the home, it does take you into the state assessments, but you have the summary and the standards. So the summary is a little bit different because it's just a graphical view of what the students have done. So if you look here, let me switch back so I'm in my current school year. Again, the downfall of the demo, I do have to switch sometimes. You typically won't, you want to be in the current year, what grade the students currently are, and then this is what you would be involved with is what test year would you like to see? So looking at this, I could pick my assessment type. We're really going to stick with our state assessment. We only do the OST, the state test. Um, Unless you want, if you are importing your alternate assessment test. Our subject area, I'm going to switch this to math again, just because we've been looking at math. And you'll see once I click on math, nope, not yet. This is tricky because you always have to click find. But it will change. You can see here is my English language arts. It gives you the percentage of each of the standards areas who is at above or below. And then the placement level, this is for everyone in the OST, which is 900 students who has placed advanced, accomplished, and so forth. So this graph, not this graph, but the pie graph is um, interactive. So I can click on a piece of the pie if I want to see, okay, my limited students, who are those limited students throughout my school? I can click on that piece of the pie. Okay, notice I didn't click anything over here, so I'm still in language arts. Okay, make that clear. I have not clicked find yet. So I'm just looking at this piece of pie. If I click on it, it is automatically going to take me into the standards. Oh, and it kept that search. Let's try this again. Leave it at English. I'm going to look at my limited students. There we go. So it's only showing me those students that are limited in my English. Notice it's a mix of grades. So if I have admin access to multiple buildings, you're going to see the multiple grades. So then if you wanted to filter out even more, you can filter out by grade level right here. I can, so if I only wanted to see my fifth graders or my third graders, etc., I can pull just those out individually. So let's go back to the summary. And you'll see the same filters are going to be over here on the side. So if I want to look at my current, we'll look at my fifth graders. Okay. So in the 23, 24, that's when they tested was last year. I don't want a specific teacher. Maybe I want to pull out my IEP students so I can see how they have done with their state test, or any of my students that are on a RIMP in third grade. Now we're going up to sixth grade. So if you are using DataMap for that, you can pull if they have a RIMP or not. Or maybe I want to look at my gifted kids. I can pull in and the area that they are gifted in. Some other things that you can look at is their placement levels for different tests. So I want to look at math. I'm looking at English, sorry, but I also want to see those students that, in English, but I also want to see the ones maybe that are in advanced in my OST. So then I can pull in the advanced math kids that see how they're doing in their English. So you can filter it down even more. And then, you can also, if I wanna see in English who is my bubble kid. So who are those kids that were getting the 684? So maybe I'm looking at my ELA 2 or my Algebra 1, and I wanna see who are those students, that are showing accomplished, but yet they were below that proficient mark of 700. So I can say, and I'm not going to do this one, but I can say, okay, it's between, and I can say that 684 range and the 700 range. Again, if you wanted to, you don't have to, but it's just different ways to filter out. And then you can also look at the attendance records for your students. So if you are seeing that there's a higher percentage of limited and basic students, maybe you want to see students that have missed greater than um, so maybe we're going to say greater than 30 hours. And then it's going to pull up those students. Now you'll notice that as I am clicking on stuff, if I want to remove it, I just click on the blank and it takes it out. And it's not live. So if I'm clicking on stuff, it's not automatically adjusting any of my charts over here. I have to click on find in order for that to happen. So, looking at this, I'm only going to do English for grade 5 and I'm going to hit find. So you'll see it's pulling up my grade 4 language arts. So my percentages have changed since the whole school, and I have 300 records that it is pulling in compared to the 900 that I had before. So same thing, this is interactive. So if I clicked on any of those, I can also come over here and say, okay, who are my 40 advanced kids? I can click on the 40. It will bring those students in. So same thing as clicking on that piece of pie. So language arts is broken down the same way as math. It's going to show the student, their grade level, what month they took their test. And I don't believe the demo has an example of this. You know what? Let's switch to third grade. They might have it here. Let me look. And they don't. So this will be what month they tested. So we know our third grade, they test in the fall and they test in spring. So based on this, it might be different. Some of the students might show October, some of the students might show, depending, March, April. Um, and then it will have an asterisk next to it. So if you see that asterisk, that means the highest of the two scores. So again, I don't see that in the demo, but that would be available for, and I'm just looking at advanced, so it might be someplace else. So then you can see each of the areas where they were above, if they were at, and then of course the subject areas, the prior year and the current year, and the same check boxes over to the side. Any questions with state assessments and how to look at that data? Okay, let's move on to data points. So, looking at our data points. So, our data points are again varied based on what your district has imported into DataMap and what your district uses. So, um, it could be Dibbles. It could be you might have the KRA in here. You might have your AP scores, your ACT scores. So, just depending. I have just a few things in here for us to look at in the demo. So, looking at this, the first thing that we are going to look at is our ACT scores. So, maybe we're getting close to the end of the year. We want to look to see what students um, have remediation free scores. So, I want to see this. Again, I'm looking at, notice, reading, not English. So, with the ACT, it does call it reading. So, they have the reading and the writing section. I can also look at my math and I'm going to hit find. Remember, it doesn't automatically change it. So once I hit find, it will bring up my math scores. And the demo always does just take a couple minutes. So give it a second. So again, here are my ACT scores. And then if I keep scrolling over because I have all the grade levels, you can see I have Ames Web, I have maps, um, star, etc. They put the assessments in alphabetical order across the top based on the grade levels that you have selected. Then, if I want to look at just my 12th graders, I can pull in my 12th grade students, hit my find. It's going to show my ACT scores. And notice I don't have any of those extras. I don't have Ames Web or STAR or anything because our 12th graders are not using that as their assessment. But then you can see their individual math scores here to see, to have a list of my students that are remediation free. Remember, these are sort columns. So if you want to sort it lowest to highest or highest to lowest, you can do that as well. Again, all of these are exportable. So if you want this in a spreadsheet, because maybe you want to do some manipulation that DataMap doesn't do, you can pull it into a spreadsheet here. Now you're thinking ACT, oh, ACT has a composite score. Yes, it does. So a composite score, no matter if it's ACT or any of our third-party vendors, they do have some composite scores as well. It will be classified under other. So if I click on other and click on find, I'm leaving my 12th grade so we can see those ACT scores. And you can see here's my composite score. Okay, so I believe iReady has a composite score, and there's some others that do. So if they do, make sure you are using that feature to be able to see that information for our data points. So let's change this to our third grade students and see what our third grade students have. And I'm still on other. Let's go to our reading. And then based on the assessment is depending on what column headings it's going to have. So some of our data points or third party vendors have a lot of different columns, but you can see my fall, my winter, and my spring assessment um, for reading, and it breaks it down into each of the areas. Then here's a different, here's my MAPS assessments. So you can see those scores as well. So again, this is all based on what your district is importing into the system. So maybe you are using MAP, but maybe your district hasn't imported them lately, so you haven't seen those scores. So I'm going to switch to my fifth grade here for a second because I want to show you if I'm looking at a fifth grade. Yeah, we'll stick with reading. So if I'm looking at a fifth grader, they've taken several tests up to this point, two in third grade, fourth grade, and at this point we don't have fifth grade yet. But if I want to look at an individual student, I can click on the student's name. It is going to take me to that individual student's roadmap where I can see the school year summary. So, yes, it is saying the school year is 24-25, but notice it is telling me it's the OST from 23-24 because typically we don't get those results until right at the end of the school year or after the kids have gotten out. So, it does keep that school year summary for the full year. So, if I want to look at my state assessments, I can come in here. Remember, our state assessment is English. So now I can see the multiple times that this student has taken this assessment. And then if I want to look at any of my data point history, I can come down here and notice here I can check multiple areas. So if I want to look at reading and maybe their composite score, or I want to look at reading and math, I can. So I'm just going to look at reading and notice as I'm clicking on these, I don't have to click find. It automatically is doing that here. So then you can see the different tests that the student has taken and then the different times. And basically the student has like all the assessments so you can kind of see how each of them are set up just a little bit differently. Except for our ACT. She hasn't taken her ACT yet in 5th grade. Okay. Any questions with our data points? Okay, I'm going to move on to the analysis, which is broken down into two areas. So we have our assessment comparison, which will be a quick overview, and then our multiple measures. So, our assessment comparison for a lot of us, this isn't super helpful because what this does is can compare the district, how the students did, the district did as a whole. Um, and then the individual building that the student is in. But a lot of us, we only have one elementary building, so the building elementary and the district are going to be the exact same scores. Some of our districts, like Worcester City, West Holmes, they have multiple elementaries. So it's going to compare that elementary school to how the district did in that particular grade area. So in this case, we're looking at our 4th grade ELA scores. So if I look over here, these are a little bit interactive. So if I click on one of these for my district level, it is going to show me some stats about the test. So the test as a whole. So the grade 4 ELA, the average score, the total percent passing, and so forth, the at, above, and below percentages, and how many students were tested at that grade level on that test. Okay. So if I skip to a different grade level, then those stats are going to be different. Then if I look individually at my student, if I click on her details, it's just going to show when she took the test, exactly what test it was, and what her scaled score was. Okay, so not as many details. Okay. The other thing that you can do here is not only look at an individual student, but you can also look at a teacher. So if I want to see how I did with all my students last year, if I'm that teacher, my name would come up in context, but if you're an admin, you can pick a specific teacher. So we are going to look at Mr. Bell, and he is math. And then if I want to pick a particular test, I can, or if I leave it blank, as long as I have his name and context. Oh, maybe I do have to. There we go. There's his 4th grade math. So again, based on your district and if you have multiple buildings or not, so it is going to compare the district to your individual building, and then it's also going to show where you are as a teacher. So your average of the students that were scheduled to you when the students took the 4th grade math test. Right? So that is your average as the teacher. So then if I click on this, it is going to show again what the score when the test was taken, what test it was, the average score of the students that I had that were scheduled to me, the passing rate, the at, above, and below percentages, and how many students you had for that school year. Okay, so again, we're talking about last school year. So, I had 128 kids that, were scheduled to me for fourth grade math, and this is their average. Okay. Any questions with the assessment comparison? And just like any other screen, if I click on the student's name, I'm in the teacher one. But if I see the student's name, if I click on it, it takes me into that student's roadmap so I can look at them individually and see how they've progressed over the years. So we can go back to Lori here. So if I click on her name, just like I can anyplace else, if I click on her, I now see her roadmap and I can pull up any of the subject areas. Our last area is our multiple measures. So back to our analysis and multiple measures. So again, this is all based off of scheduling. So again, depending on your intervention specialists, a lot of times they don't have individual classes assigned to them, and you can give them building access. Or if you want them to see specific kids, sometimes districts schedule them like a caseload class. You'll see sometimes athletes for coaches class, things like that. If students are scheduled in those classes, those teachers or coaches can see the students' scores. And then what is neat in this one that I like is that you can also include their course grades. So how they did in the course itself compared to how they did on the state assessment. So we're going to break this down. So we're going to leave it. Now, notice on this one, it puts them all together: English, reading, and writing. Okay, so I'm just going to leave that as is. I am going to look at my OST. And notice you can pick other assessments, but we're just going to look at the OST. And then you can also pick multiple school years. So if you just want the current school year or if you want the past, a couple previous school years, you can do that as well. And then what test do I want to look at? We are going to look at that fourth grade ELA. So I'm not going to change any other of my filter options, but you'll see that they're basically the same as what you've seen on the previous screens. But I have this new area right here that is called Include Course Marks. If I check that and then I click on Find, what it is going to do is think. There it goes. So it's going to show me my students. Okay. So, and notice I did not pick a grade level. So it is showing all of my students, but some of them it's not going to affect me. So we're going to filter even more because I wanted to show you kind of how this works. Again, it's based on scheduling. So I picked my fourth grade ELA test. So it is showing me for the 2023-24 school year, here's my fourth grade ELA test. And then it's showing me my students. It's going to show their score, their placement level. It's going to show each of the standards areas, and then a circle. The red circle is they are below. If I see the half circle, the blue, that means they are at, and then green is above. Okay. Now, if they did not test, if they were not tested in that area, you'll see that it's completely blank. But it is going to show the students' grades even though they weren't in that tested area. Okay. But if I scroll way over to one of my students, we're looking at Lori here at the top, I can then see what she has received in reading 5. So this is what she's scheduled in this year. So she's pretty much been maintaining C's, and then you can see looking at her score, she's limited. So I'm going to remove some of our other grades. So let's just look at our 5th grade students. So I'm just going to pull in the 5th grade, leave everything as is, and then I'm going to hit find. So this is one where you probably will use more filters so you can kind of just pull in that information that you want. So now you can kind of see it side by side, just my 5th grade students, how they did on the OST. So I have a student here that's accelerated, and it looks like they've been getting mostly B's and a couple A's. But in the writing area, they must love writing because they're getting A's and one B, but yet they didn't do good on the test. So again, that's a way to kind of compare to what they're doing in their classroom to what they're doing on the test. Usually we see it the opposite. You'll see students, they're not giving an effort in class. Maybe they're getting C's because, they don't turn stuff in and so forth. But then when it comes to the state test, they give it their all and they're accelerated. So, um, it's just a way to compare. You can, again, not filter, sort any of these columns. And then you can also change the orientation. So right now we have our text going um, horizontal. If I click on my header orientation, it changes it so I can see more on my screen at a time. And then same with all our other screens, we can export that if we want to do something in a spreadsheet. So we can look at a couple others. So let's go to our math. Okay, so I'm going to leave it as the OST. I'm going to leave it for the 23-24 school year. And I want my algebra. Okay. I'm going to include those course marks. And then you can see, oh, sorry, I wanted my 10th grade. They haven't taken algebra. So you can see it's just populating their grades. And depending on where you're at in the school year is going to be show you the grades based on that. So again, these are report card marks, not the teacher's current grade marks, if that makes sense. So this pulls from the report card information, not from the teacher's grade book. Okay. So I have the algebra. I do have my 10th graders. This time should be right. So now you'll see each of the standards areas has changed for my math and then the different courses. Okay, so if there's other courses that that student is in, those would be listed here. Okay. So typically, if you're seeing the Algebra 1, they would probably be in another, either Algebra 2 or some other math. But because of the demo, it's the same. So if I'm looking at, we're going to keep it on math. We are going to look at my 4th grade math for my 5th graders because they're 5th grade this year, but I want to see multiple school years. Okay, so I'm going to select the last 3 school years. So that'd be 3rd grade, 4th grade, and, well, actually, 4th grade and 3rd grade and 4th grade. I'm sorry. See, it's confusing. And then I'm going to click on find. And then you can see the school year and then where they placed, and then the school year and then where they placed. Obviously, these would be 3rd grade and 4th grade, but because my students never advance, it's the same. And then the current school year, what quarter they have in Math 5. So I can compare multiples. So what you can do when you're comparing multiples is you also now have this graph. So if I click on the graph, it is kind of going to show the percentage of um, how many students were passing, who was proficient, who was limited, and so forth. And it's going to show you that growth each year. My data is the same, so you don't really see any growth. You guys will see growth as these students progress through the grade levels. Okay. Any questions with assessments and multiple measures? Okay, I'll stay on for another minute or so if you guys are trying to type something or if you want to unmute after I stop recording. But if you have any questions, let me know. Thank you.